It's Cleveland real estate and investors versus LA real estate and investors on the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast.
Let's get ready to rumble!
This is the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Reilly and Mike Ferrante. California real estate and its relation to Cleveland real estate is a topic that has been brought up many times in our podcast. We decided to get an actual realtor and investor from LA, Karim of Century 21, to give his perspective. We get an LA temperature check on prices, cap rates, and get into the psyche of the California investor looking to buy in Cleveland. We also discuss how Karim guides people interested in buying in the Cleveland area, the Cleveland market versus California market, and more. Stay tuned. But first, a word from our sponsor.
If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand or should understand the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen and often do. You overpay for a house and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes and you have nobody to repair it because guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock solid part of town. It comes with a gold star tenant paying top dollar rent. And we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested. Hi, everybody. It's a sunny day in Cleveland. A little humid, August, and we have a very, very exciting podcast today. We have an actual realtor from LA, Karim. How are you doing out there in Irvine?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. This is going to be fun. It'll be a little freewheeling, and of course, we got my sidekick, Mike Ferrante. So, hi, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic here with a big smile again, Mike.
You always have a big smile. Look at that picture of yours with the coffee and the. Anyways, all right. Well, let's just start jumping down some rabbit holes. I think the first question I want to ask, and then Mike, you jump in. We'll double team Karim here. Is we've done a lot of podcasts and talked for years about the legendary California buyer, and it's really been more from a standpoint of the California sucker buyer, not the who are coming there and don't think anything of dropping $250,000 on a house that's only worth $150 because they're so used to the inflated property values in the California market. So we have seen our share of crash and burns from California investors, Karim. So it's going to be interesting hearing it, from your perspective because you work with investors. So that's my lead in. Mike, why don't you tee up the first of questions for Karim?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Mike, we've talked about the mythical California investor who comes here with a big wad of cash and is used to high prices. So that was kind of my first question for Karim was, as an actual California realtor and investor, what is the kind of temperature of investors who are in your market, and what do you think they're looking for when they come to a place like Cleveland?
Okay, so I honestly feel like even with the numbers that Mike gave, it makes perfect sense. Nothing here is 250,000 anymore. So when you say it's only worth 100, but they pay 250, that's a steal. Right. So I understand it. They're leaving California. Some people are leaving California for lower values, but also higher cap rates. So I'm based in Orange County and I work with investors both here. Orange County, just for reference, is about 45 minutes to an hour south of LA. OK, I work with investors here in Orange County where the cap rates are pretty low, depending on the property type, but they're pretty low, right? The normal here is anywhere between 4% to maximum 5%. 5's like
wow.
a steal.
Wow.
right? Because you have property appreciation, very strong schools, very strong tenant profiles. So you're almost hedging. If you want Orange County, you're putting in a big dollar amount, but it's almost guaranteed rent. Almost. You always have the possibility of someone not paying or having trouble, but for the most part, it's very good tenant profile. You go out east of LA and north of Orange County. So you go up in the Inland Empire and up in the high desert. That's where I work with a lot of investors also, because the numbers are just better, right? So, and the cap rates over there are 7-8%. So they're considerably better than here. Still a very strong market in terms of appreciation. Tenant profiles are not as strong as Orange County, but still very high demand. Still, for the most part, if you do your due diligence and you know what you're looking for, you will pick a good tenant that will, they'll pay, they'll take care of it.
All right. Let me jump in here, Karim. I think for most of our listeners, the last place they're going to want to invest their money is California. So, and I think I think right now, California seems to have a one-way street out of California into, states like Idaho and Nevada, Washington and Oregon. I mean, people are just leaving California in droves. So let's frame the question from the standpoint of your California investor, your Orange County person who wants to invest in Cleveland, and what we have found is they don't understand the different neighborhoods in Cleveland. I mean, they're just going into the MLS, and we're getting calls from people who just bought houses in Cleveland looking for prop managers, and they just bought in a ghetto and they didn't even know better. So how do you guide your investors into the Cleveland market?
Just introducing them to the right partners. So Mike's our go-to referral agent, and I've sent him referrals in the past. It's all about having someone local guiding you on the right neighborhoods, like you said, that you want to be in. It's not necessarily about the cheapest price. It's not about the highest return or cap rate. It's also about buying in an area that's desirable, that will appreciate, so you just basically need to have someone local with local knowledge that's going to guide you.
Mike, well, how do you handle those calls coming in for our listeners?
Yeah, I think it's really cool to hear you say that, Karim, because Mike Reilly and I have said that all along. I think a lot of the investors we get from out of town, whether it's California or otherwise, they look at numbers on paper. And Mike, how many times have we said, they say, wow, this is amazing. How can I go wrong? And then we've done multiple podcasts on exactly how that goes south. But I think it's like any other investor, when those calls come in, I kind of interview them, ask them, what are you looking for? What do you think you can buy? Because I think, as we've said, some people come in with a very unrealistic view of what can actually happen. They see numbers on paper and they say, oh, this is a gold mine. So it's kind of a long list of questions. Just as much as they're interviewing me to see if I'm a good fit, I like to interview them to see if they're realistic and if they're going to take coaching well. They need the boots on the ground, as Karim put it, and I want to make sure that they're going to listen to the coaching that I'm going to give them, because if not, then it's not a good fit. Why would we want to work with each other?
Right. You want to add to that, Karim?
That's absolutely it.
Go ahead.
I mean, buyers need to have trust in who's helping them on the ground, because Mike's the one that's out there, looks at properties every single day, knows what areas are good, what's not. So they just have to have trust that he'll guide them the right way.
What's been your perception of the Cleveland market, Karim?
As an outsider?
Yeah.
I think everything you said in the beginning, like property values are relatively very low to what I'm used to. Cap rates are very high compared to what I'm used to, what I deal with here. I haven't followed it closely to where I know, like I haven't tracked appreciation. I don't know details about like rental demand and so on, but it's very intriguing from a cash flow and from an entry standpoint. There's pretty easy to, from a financial standpoint, pretty easy to save up a down payment to buy a property or just buy cash.
I have a question, Mike. I got a question I got to ask. So, Mike, we've lived in Cleveland pretty much our whole lives, right? And we know over the years the various jokes that have been made about Cleveland and, burning the river, catching on fire, and the mistake on the lake and all that. And you and I know how Cleveland has undergone a renaissance, going from a Rust Belt city to really more of a banking and healthcare and, all the stuff that's going on here. Karim, as an outsider, what is your perception of Cleveland in general? Is it still, do people still think of Cleveland and go, why would you go there? Or have you had any inkling of the renaissance that has gone on here?
If I'm being very honest, I would say it's more the first impression that you described. So I know there's jobs, and I know because I've talked to you, Mike, and I did some research. So I know there's some development that's taken place over the years, but the impression is, like, I would say it's probably not like here, not like California.
Interesting. Shame on our leadership, huh, Mike?
No. The difference is, Karim, we from Cleveland think everything's burning down in California, and you in turn think the river's still on fire. So
Right.
I think the truth is somewhere in between. We did a podcast earlier with Ralph Dice, who's a executive recruiter, which you might find interesting. I think it was about 6-7 months ago. And, he's a headhunter, and he brings in people, for the clinic and some real big postings. And he says, it's funny. It's like the 5 stages of people moving to Cleveland. The first stage is, oh my God, I've been sent to Siberia. It's like Hogan's Heroes, and they're going to go to the Russian front. And that's their first impression. It's all snow. It's like going up to Alaska, compared to California. And then, of course, they buy a 6-bedroom mansion for $450,000, and they have their pick of country clubs to join, all with first-rate golf architects. Their kids have the option to either go to great schools or to the 5 or 6 private schools. They find the restaurant scene is pretty vibrant. They find there's no traffic. They can ride their bike to work from where they live. And within 6 months, they're literally telling their friends that they can't believe how great it is. And then guess what happens? They get that phone call and say, all right, we're going to move you back to California, back to, corporate headquarters. And they're crying because they have to leave. So, I've been telling some of the California investors that I've talked to, we've met through this podcast, that they might want to look at, if they're not locked into living in California, I mean, they didn't grow up there and roots aren't planted, that they should think about investing in Cleveland, buying a property, a really nice property, maybe Airbnb it, which we can help with. And then they move to Cleveland. They sell their house for $2 million and just cash out and, move to Cleveland. I think for a lot of people that are investing in Cleveland, the most important thing you can do is actually come and visit Cleveland. Then you get to know the different neighborhoods. It's kind of like going to New York City. New York City is, one of the largest cities in the world, but it's also a city of neighborhoods. It's probably like LA. I remember, Karim, when 25 years ago, we were visiting my sister who lived in California. She had a boyfriend who, I forget where he lived. I didn't know where I was half the time. Am I in Westwood? Am I in Beverly Hills? I mean, it was just one big highway system. So unless you know the area, you really, until you're actually here, you really can't appreciate it. So, and I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be a Cleveland booster, but I think a lot of Californians are really looking at the cost of living, the traffic, the drought that they're going through, and thinking, you know what? Maybe I should think about moving. What's your thoughts, Karim?
100%. That's what's happening. Like the past couple of years, about a quarter to a third of the listings I took were people leaving California to different destinations. Now, Cleveland's not one of the top places where Californians go to. They typically had, there's been a lot of people going to Boise or Texas, all over the place, Arizona, Nevada, because they're closer states. So it's happening. People are moving. They're tired of traffic. You said it. Taxes, the politics. There's all different kinds of reasons for different people, but you're absolutely right. People are heading out and they're going to, it depends for each person what their work situation's like, what their family situation's like, but different destinations. It's happening.
Yeah, and I think if you're, Mike, one of our listeners who I had a chance to talk to and advise, she was from New Hampshire. I mean, I think she was from New Hampshire, and she grew up in, the Buffalo area, and she just went to, med school out in California, got, matched there at the hospital. I mean, what's the point of staying there? I mean, it's not like she's originally from there. And so you got all these transplants. I think a lot of them are probably going back to where they grew up, and where they grew up. Like you take a Buffalo, a Cleveland, a Columbus, Pittsburgh. I mean, these are vibrant cities now. You look at what Indianapolis has become. There's a big story in the New York Times about how the whole demographics have changed. It's a lot more diverse. You have Charlotte, which is becoming, trending blue. It's a lot more diverse. You have Austin, Texas is starting to change. And then you have these states, Karim, I'm sure you've seen this, like, Boise, Idaho. I mean, property values have doubled and tripled because of the California demand. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That and Tennessee. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, Nashville at one point was the fastest growing city, I think, in the country. Back to your point, Mike, I had some clients recently who I believe the husband was military or military related job, and he was in San Diego, a little south of Karim, and he retired, and guess where he came back? They're both from the Cleveland area. They came back here. So it was kind of cool. This might be a little bit of a diversion, but I'm kind of dying to know, a question for Karim. We hear the stories about people leaving California. There's Facebook groups dedicated to leaving California, life after California. So we hear about all this, and yet if the population is going down, which I don't know how much it's going down, property values keep going up. How is that possible? I'm trying to understand that market, and how, if people are really leaving, how is it that the prices are still going up so much and the demand is still so high?
So, like Mike, I'm sure, like most other markets, they haven't built enough. That's number one. In an area like Orange County, where it's kind of landlocked with the other counties, there isn't much space to expand. So there's always demand. But other than that, also, I feel like we've had a fair number of people coming in California, whether it's job transfers from other areas or international people, and that's where they usually land. It's either coast, like New York, Washington, or California, Seattle, all these West Coast cities. We have a fair share of people coming in. Now, it's a net loss. I don't have the exact numbers. It's a net loss, but the way people portray it, you'd feel like, so California overall, I think, is like a population of 40 million. Now it's like 39 or 38 something. So it's gone down a bit, but you'd feel like from what the narrative sounds like, it's become 20 million, which
Right.
Yeah, right.
right?
It's
So-
like it's like the river's on fire. I get
Exactly,
it. Yeah.
exactly. Like you said, California is burning down. Not really. Like just some portions of little pockets of California are. So it's how the narrative is spun, and I think the picture is everyone's leaving, but no, there's a lot of people coming, so the demand's there.
Right. And you have immigration too. I mean, you have a lot of, I'm sure, immigrants
Exactly.
coming
Exactly.
into California. What I guess piggybacking on what Mike was saying on, property values, is there a feeding frenzy? I mean, is it going to get to the point where, just your average buyer just can't afford to live there? I mean, when do prices actually start correcting there? If they ever do?
Honestly, Mike, I don't know that they will correct or when, but I think we're heading into, if we're not already there, an affordability issue, especially with people that have not bought properties before. So first-time buyers, that's a big thing, because if you bought already, you rode out the market. You took that wave up, so you at least have that equity.
Right.
About anything, that's where affordability issues come in, and we see people. That's why a lot of younger people are leaving California, because for them it's just insane. Like you're talking 200 and 300,000, but anything like condo, even here in Orange County, starter condo, you're probably talking 600,000.
Wow. Well, it's like New York. I remember years ago, my wife and I go to New York every year. We've been going there for almost 40 years. But I remember seeing, visiting friends, and they had these little studio apartments that went for $500,000. It was just unbelievable.
That's exactly it.
But New York has gone through its series of corrections. And that's something you don't really see in California. Now let's just talk about the historic drought there and how that's impacting California. I'm just more curious. I know people want to hear about Cleveland, but I got to ask you that question about the droughts, which everything, climate change. I mean, people ever caught saying like, I don't know if I want to live here with this kind of impending doom. What's the feeling in California?
Again, I think it's more people from outside California are more concerned about it, but it is a concern. It's not like it's not there. It was more of a concern, I'll tell you, like 3 to 5 years ago. It was like the drought was bad. It was terrible. Everything was brown. They had regulations about not being able to water your lawn. Like it was just, and people's lawns were turning brown, and it was a bad situation. But we had a couple of seasons where there was a decent amount of rainfall, so that was okay. It kind of turned things around. How it plays out in the future, or what's the long-term outlook on that, I honestly don't know, but I don't think it concerns. It's not like, let me rephrase it. It's not one of the reasons I hear why people are leaving California.
I hear you. Yeah, no. I had to ask, and the last question I want to throw out there is, I've got a very good friend of mine who lives in Ventura, and his house burned down, and he rebuilt it. It's just fireproof to the max, no grass. It's just all stones and stuff like that. And he's originally from Pittsburgh, and he's one of my longest and best friends. And I said to him, why don't they do what Saudi Arabia does, the Mideast, where they just, take that ocean water and desalinate it, and just set up these big stations where you can just pump fresh water out there. Has California ever talked about that?
There's actually a desalination plant in Huntington Beach, which is here in Orange County. I'm not sure how many other ones are out there or the volume that they churn, but yeah, it's at least locally here, I know there is something like that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're kind of straying away. Mike, get us out of this rabbit hole of global climate and other stuff.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, topics, comments, or guests that you want us to have on the podcast, or just want to say hi, you can email us at theclevelandrealestateinvestor@gmail.com.
Well, let's why don't we shift back to investing a little bit and back to Cleveland a little bit. Karim, so we had a conversation a while back, and as you mentioned, we got connected through our coaching network. And one of your first steps after doing preliminary research was to reach out to a local expert. And, I seemed to fit that bill. And, so what if you had to give, say, apart from that, one piece of advice to an out-of-town investor when entering a new market to invest in, what would that be?
So for me, I'll tell you about myself, and I basically treat my clients or people that ask me with what I would do for myself. And I always tell them it's two things. You need a local, hands-on, real knowledgeable agent that's going to be able to guide you in the purchase process. And that I can always connect them to, because as you said, we were connected through our coaching program, and we have a great referral network. So that's number one. Number two is the management aspect of it, because property management is what stays with you. And that's the lasting effects of what you buy. I always
love it. Mike Reilly has his hands in the air and he is cheering as you're saying this.
I feel like I'm back at Catholic school. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let me answer this question. No. I was actually taking notes because, it's all well and good. I'm going to connect you to somebody on the ground. But what happens if, not you, Mike Ferrante, of course, but what happens if that guy that person on the ground is a fool or is incompetent? I think if you go with Mike Ferrante, he and I have kind of worked together for 10 years. But this year, especially, because it is a little bit of a hot market now, unlike in past years in Cleveland, the most important thing is to secure the property manager who is not a realtor. Because no disrespect, guys, but I have yet to see a good property manager who's a realtor. And Mike, you agree with me on that one.
I've talked about this many times, Mike. The problem is that when you intermingle the acquisition of the property with the management, you've got the fox watching the hen house, and I'm not saying that every realtor out there shouldn't be doing management, but I think you should focus on one or the other. Again, this is my opinion, and I know you share the opinion, but if you've got the same person helping you with acquisition, helping you with renovation and management, there's no system of checks and balances. So I'm a firm believer that those activities should be split to different people or companies.
Yeah, Karim, we had a guy who, really nice guy from the Bay Area, who contacted us a couple of weeks ago, and he was looking at one of our properties that we had for sale, and we have probably about half a dozen homes that we've plucked out of our portfolio that we are selling to outside investors, and the deal is that we already have the tenant in place. It's a property that we own, we've managed, we know, we've X-rated, we know everything about this house, what the maintenance cost is, what the capital expense is going to be over the next 5 years. The tenants love us, the rent's on time, it's a rock solid, good return, good cap rate. And he came in, he wanted to see it, and his wife's from here. In fact, ironically, his wife went to the same private schools as my kids. And he went in, he liked it, and then he flipped it over to his realtor advisor here. And she nixed the deal. Just had, hey, nice meeting you, but I don't think we're going to go this route. And I thought to myself, you know what? She just wants to sell the house. And I emailed him back. I said, you know what? We've got other people that are going to buy this property. But I thought to myself, who is your property manager? Because in Cleveland, most of them are incompetent. And that's what we've discovered. So the number one thing that anybody who wants to invest in Cleveland needs to have is a 5-star property management team in place. Period. End of discussion. And I sound like a broken record on some of these podcasts about this, but it's the truth. Karim, back to you.
You're absolutely right. And I would say it's not just Cleveland, anywhere. Your property manager is just as important, if not more, than your agent, because they're the ones that will be able to tell you if this is a good area for tenants. Is it rentable? Is it desirable? All that stuff. Again, this is what you will last with. The agent, you interact with them for however long it takes you to find the good deal. But that's typically not more than, a few months, right, Mike? So,
right. They've got a property manager, Karim. Yeah, it's their knucklehead brother-in-law who's looking for a job. And he's going to get anybody that he can as a tenant into this property. And then, of course, the tenant may not pay, the tenant may ruin the house, on and on and on. And that, Karim, if any podcast you should listen to, it's the one we did, Mike, about a month ago called Everybody's Making Money Except Me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I want to say for the record, too, we did not prep Karim for that question. So his answer of the two most important things, that was straight from the heart. That was not us telling him, hey, say this. That was awesome. That was just like my hands were in the air also.
No, Mike. I texted Karim. I just got done finishing up season 4 of Line of Duty on BritBox, and I highly recommend that series. It's one of the best series I've seen. And they were interviewing a witness, and somebody was in the in the back room, and she's texting him, ask him this, ask him that. So anyways, I'm a bad rabbit hole, but definitely see Line of Duty. But anyways, Karim, yeah, I mean, that's why we started this podcast a year and a half ago. I couldn't believe the amount of dumb money coming in to Cleveland. Wrong street, wrong property manager, people losing their shirts, horror stories, people getting shot. That's my favorite one.
Literally,
right?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, yeah. That made the national headlines in Tel Aviv.
It did.
Yeah.
So let me ask you gentlemen something from an outside perspective, someone that's potentially looking to invest in Cleveland. What are some things that I should be looking out for, number one, and what kind of properties are, what's like the hot property out there that, or a property type that someone should be looking to buy into?
Okay, Karim, let me go first, Mike. This is kind of like investing for dummies in Cleveland, investing in Cleveland for dummies.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, here we go. Number one, don't get mesmerized by price. Number one, just get all your California biases out. You're looking at the shiny bubble of this house for $50,000. You're going on your spreadsheet, looking at the cap rate, and you're not factoring in all the hidden costs. Like, I just bought a house in the ghetto. The only people that are going to be renting from me people are going to have a problem paying their rent, and there might be some problems with the maintenance, and I won't be able to get a property manager. So get the price out of your head. Number two, there are areas of Cleveland, and this goes back to a couple of podcasts we've done, Mike, we call micro targeting. There are areas of Cleveland that are ready to explode in terms of appreciation. And so don't just, I'll use a California expression, Karim, don't just surf on this popular beach here with the waves. The waves are breaking in an area you don't really know about. So appreciation is a very, very real potential in Cleveland, even though it's a hot market now. And then, of course, number three is line up the property manager first. And that property manager needs to have a track record where first-class tenants are going to want to go to a house where that property manager is managing, believe it or not. It's sort of like if you're, hey, we got our fingers crossed in Cleveland with the Browns, and guess what? Free agents now want to come to Cleveland because it's a great team. It's the same thing with a property manager. Property manager drives everything. It's not the afterthought, which is what we seem to experience in Cleveland. And I'll throw this back over to you, Mike.
Yeah, so Karim knows, because he's also a licensed realtor, that as real estate agents and brokers, we're bound not to steer people. We can't say, oh, you don't want to buy in that neighborhood or this neighborhood. So Mike, I always appreciate your perspective because you can just say what's on your mind. I'll answer that question this way. I'm an investor, and what I'm looking for are still singles and doubles. I think that the best returns and the best mix of return and risk is still in the singles and doubles. As I look at multifamily, even mixed use, commercial office, that kind of stuff, I don't see as much opportunity there. I think the prices are too high for what the returns are. Now, certainly I see people investing in all kinds of things, and, not necessarily with me either, because we don't really do commercial, and the big apartment buildings aren't my thing either. But from my perspective, where I see the biggest potential return and in a nice blend of lower risk are the Heights areas, the inner ring suburb type areas. I think that betting on some of the really low price stuff is like buying penny stocks. You might make money, and 3 years from now, you might tell me how much money you made and how great those rental properties performed for you. But being a seasoned investor, like my personal taste is for less risk. And maybe I impose that filter when I answer that question to some extent. But again, it's my opinion.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. This is part 1 of our conversation with Karim. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will be part 2 of our conversation. You can find all our episodes at www.reilly-properties.com or on your favorite streaming services like Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Overcast, and more. Perspective. You just got a book about running an Airbnb. Yay. And your motor is revving. Soon, you're off to Bed Bath & Beyond to buy scented candles and fancy soaps. Okay, stop. Hold on. Before you jump into the pool, make sure A, you can swim, and B, there's water in the pool, especially in the deep end. Airbnb can be a great business, but you have to know what you're doing. You need to know how to swim, which is why our upcoming webinar could be the natural first step. Our 2-hour seminar will cover all the key points of running an Airbnb. More details on the webinar and how to gain access coming soon on our podcast. Just keep listening.